men in black factor, I think, characterizes our politics, regardless that you encode, regardless that you are in Jubilee. I know that you are starting to walk the referendum direction. And one of the things that must keep on bothering a mind such as mine is the intolerance. That there's intolerance within CORD, where you are not allowed to participate in a democratic party election. And when people ask, you say that is a small matter. Let us deal with big national matters. Political parties are the nurseries in which democracy is nurtured before it is transplanted onto the national plantation, and where it then flourishes. That we are not seeing in CORD. I'm afraid that I'm also not seeing that within Jubilee, where we have seen governors who are speaking about the referendum being told to toe the line or quit. They're being told it is this way or the highway, and you have to decide which of the two you'd like. I think this is extremely unfortunate. I think one of the things we need to remind ourselves about the referendum, I hope I'm not jumping the gun, that the people, and there's a lawyer here who was part of this process before it was even diluted and adulterated in Naivasha.
And bastardized.
Yes. That when we were drafting the constitution and bringing in the article and other articles, in fact, there are several that talk about the referendum and even the laws of elections, we had taken lessons from our past, that people had burst into the streets of this country to seek to vary the dispensation, but that avenue was never there. Then we said that we don't want to see ourselves in the streets again. And so let us have this kind of avenue that if you feel that you want to bring about change, go out, look for your 1 million signatures. If you can't get 1 million signatures, forget about it, because you are going nowhere. But beyond that, I think, again, is a referendum absolutely essential in this country at this time? My straight answer is no. It is not necessary. It is not obligatory. So we must ask ourselves the next question. So why are we going that direction? It boils down to one simple thing: intransigence. Can't we sit down, talk to one another, say these are the issues that we wish to be addressed, and to this point we meet. To this point, can these ones remain and wait for another day? I think that ought to be the attitude, and if I speak for the Council of Governors, that is the attitude. But there's intransigence to the extent that they're not being heard, and therefore you say, then let us go to 257.
PLO, you agree? We don't need a referendum. I'm quite clear in my mind, and let us begin where we must begin. Let us look at CORD. What is the DNA of the organization called CORD? Is it anything new? The individuals, are they telling us anything new? No, they are not. Let us look at the Jubilee formation. They are in government, or they govern as if they are governing the entire country and are not engaged in any election. They should. What issues are on the table that deserve to be addressed? Are they governance issues? Yes, they are. If you ask me, what we should have done is to allow the Constitution of Implementation Commission to complete its 5 years. They would then give the country a report on the status of implementation and the gaps that need to be filled, whether they need to be filled through legislation or they need to be filled through a referendum. And then there would be a bipartisan approach, so that if there are issues that require a referendum, they are subjected to a referendum alongside the election that will be held either in 2017 or 2018. But as it is now, the referendum is being used as a political tool by discontented politicians to drive their political agenda. That is not to say that the issues that they are raising are not legitimate. They are legitimate, but they are the excuse rather than the reason. I still hold the view that President Kenyatta actually did invite CORD to dialogue. What President Kenyatta, in my view, did not do, and in my view should not have done, you don't do that, is to succumb to leaders who are operating from outside of institutions. When you have institutions which are being nurtured, the National Assembly, and you are present in the National Assembly, I would have expected people from the CORD coalition to say that we need to have a parliamentary select committee and use the institution of parliament to have a motion growing from the MCAs, from the counties, maturing into the National Assembly, finding its way into the Senate, and a resolution is made so that there is a basis for dialogue. And you only have to listen to some politician from the CORD coalition in the unguarded moments. They say, this is the beginning of the march of our leader to State House. That is the subtext. And therefore, we are drowning very important issues in the sea of narrow political interest. And that is the tragedy. A friend of mine told me that the tragedy of Africa today is that those with ideas don't have power, and those with power don't have ideas.
I love it. I was wondering, when were we going to write something down, PLO? Those with ideas have no power.
Yes.
Those with power have no ideas. All right, tell me, CORD says they've collected what, more than 1.4, maybe 1.5, 1.5, let's say 1.5 million votes. You, PLO, you were there at the beginning of this. Do you just collect signatures and then take them to the National Assembly? Or is there a question that goes with the signatures? Have they framed a question yet, or that's not the time?
I'll come to that presently, but you know that my good brother and I here rarely have occasion to differ. Sometimes we have slightly different shades of opinion.
Are you different now?
But it's usually the same opinion. It's only the presentation that is slightly different,
yes,
and the shade that is slightly different. So that when we talk about the referendum,
yes,
I agree with him that it is absolutely unnecessary for us to be going to a referendum at this point. I differ slightly when we say that we must, regardless of all other happenings, wait for 5 years to lapse, and then we can say, let us look at it. You see, if you are on a bus, like a Kiraitu Murungi's bus, and you are going to Meru, if you get somewhere in Embu and you start seeing the red lights on the dashboard, you don't say, let me just drive on until I get to Meru and then I will stop and find out what was wrong with the bus. Because there are challenges, there are serious issues. And I agree with the PLO that these are issues which can be discussed. I want to draw a clear distinction between the CORD efforts in the referendum. There are several streams. There's even an MCA stream that is beginning to come, the White Nile, the Blue Nile. I don't know whether they are going to meet somewhere in Atabara and flow all the way to the Mediterranean together, but I want to draw a distinction in those efforts. Look, there's something we call devolution. This devolution has got a socio-political, historical, developmental planning context that you go back to the year 1965 when we came up with what we call the sessional paper number 10 on African socialism and its application to planning in Kenya, and it became a centrist kind of policy framework for development in this country. It marginalized whole swathes of the country. It called the country to start struggling against itself. It raised temperatures, animosities, and so on. And in recent times, we said that let us devolve. Let us decongest power. Let us decongest opportunities. Let us decongest development. Take it to the people and closer to the people. Then we have gotten to a point where there's clawback on that. Why? Look at agriculture. Devolved. You look at the functions of the role of the national government in agriculture, it is policy. You look at the implementation, it is devolved. Then go and look at the budget, the national budget, the budget lines in this country. You find that the Ministry of Agriculture receives the same budget that it received 2 years ago, 3 years ago, while the functions have been devolved. And we have sat in forums and said, let us correct this misequation. You look at health, that what belongs to the national government is policy and referral hospitals. But the entire budget still sits with Afya House. When they used to pay everybody's salaries, they had the same budget as they have today, and you are asking the counties that pay these people. So we sit down and we say, let us correct this. You go to the Intergovernmental Budgetary and Economic Council, you go to the summit in which the president sits with the governors, you go to a variety of other forums and nothing is happening. So it's like you want devolution to fail. And these people are saying, look, if you can't, may I score? may I be allowed? I'm in the goal mouth. May I score?
You score.
Yes.
Through pass.
Yes. So you have gotten to a point where through these various forums, this has been completely ignored. So you are saying, look, for us to protect devolution, for us to get these funds to come to the counties to do the work that they are supposed to do, perhaps let us entrench this in the Constitution and therefore protect devolution.
So from the 40% the government is giving you, you're insisting on 45. That'll make all the difference?
Look, the government
before you answer, PLO, go ahead.
I must disagree agreeably with my friend Barack on this issue. This administration has been in power for 1 year, 8 months at very best. The South African...
And you know, he has told us in the past that a chick which will grow
I know that.
into a cock is spotted on the day.
I agree with you. But remember the devolution with the South African experience, the philosophical underpinnings of what devolution is South African. Let us look at minimums. And I was there when we set up the minimums in the Constitution. When you have a minimum, it means that you can go to a maximum. And it means that money follows functions. You don't get money and look for functions. And what you do, therefore, is to create capacity in the areas in which you are devolving functions. When I look at issues such as agriculture, and sometimes we behave as if the counties are a totally different country from central government. All this money that remains at the center is not used for something. There is nothing called central government. There is a country called Kenya which has units. And what happens at the center is also for the benefit of those units. My argument is these are not issues, if you permit me, which are referendable. These are governance issues which can be dealt with by way of legislation. I'm not convinced that that avenue has been exhausted. And let me conclude by saying, if you look at the entire question of what we are going to a referendum for, it is in this country, and this is a first in the world, where you tell people to give you signatures and they don't know what they are signing for. I hear my good friend, the former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, saying that we are going to subject the question of corruption, the question of security and other things to a referendum. So when Kenyans say no to corruption, no to security, will security stop? Will insecurity disappear? Will corruption disappear? In other words, I'm saying that the issues that we are talking about are legitimate. But when you are suffering from malaria, you don't take Panadol, you take quinine. And this is my problem.
Provided that the doctor is willing to administer the quinine. He almost scored, but he hit the goalpost. Okay? It bounced and it came where I am.
Let me now score.
So let me now score.
Okay.
Yes. I agree with my brother here.
Yes.
That the issues we are talking about are not referendable.
Yeah.
And that if we were just to get intransigence out of the way, we would be able to talk about them. I also agree with him that when you are talking about funds must follow functions. And in fact, this is a constitutional requirement. It is inscribed there in the Constitution that funds will follow functions. So you have already devolved health services. But you're still keeping the funds that belong to health services with the national government. You have devolved agriculture, whether you like it or not. You have given an official gazette notice from the transitional authority. You have devolved. Then you look at the budget lines. The budget lines are keeping those funds with the national government. So how will devolution therefore begin working? It cannot work because you have put there the vehicle, but you have not put in the essential fuel and other liquids and fluids that it requires to be able to move. So let us sit down and agree, as we have indeed sat down in the past. There have been a number of meetings which the Council of Governors has held with none other than with His Excellency, the President, with His Excellency, the Deputy President, and they have said, yes, these are legitimate issues, we are going to address them. However, nothing is happening. Instead, what you are saying is demonization of devolution, and it takes us back to 1964, where the same things happened, and eventually devolution was seen as a bad thing, as a mistake, and it had to be dismantled.
PLO, speaking of referendum, when we look at a country like Scotland, and we have to look at examples, they've been campaigning for the last year and change, very vigorously, to decide whether they will be part of the United Kingdom or a new country. And that campaign has been going on very, very aggressively.
Aggressive, but mature.
But mature.
The issues are clear. And the issues that are being addressed, will we be better? Will our economy be better? Will our agriculture be better? Will our oil be better managed? And you can see the civility with which it is being conducted. In this country, because we are drawing from that Scottish example in order to inform our very own. What are the issues? The issues in Scotland is that they think they need the identity, and the question is simple. Do you need a Scottish nation that will run its affairs but remain a good member of the Committee of the Nations of Europe, to which it will have to apply in good time? And it's being carried out in a proper manner. Look at Kenya. We are being told with fanfare at funerals and at weddings and other places, sign here. What are you signing for? Nobody knows. We will tell you in good time. There are people that we have put together called experts who will tell you in good time. So what are you doing? You are simply canalizing ethnic euphoria in one direction, and you are telling them this is good for you. And in the unguarded moments I've said, you say, this is the beginning of our march to State House. What I would urge in a situation such as this, because President Kenyatta is the one whom history will remember, is for him to now climb down and tell everybody, be presidential, request to address Parliament. This is what I would advise him. Request to address Parliament that he has seen what is happening in the country. He has had the misfortune of being stoned or about to be stoned in Migori, and he has walked around the country, and he now holds the view that, number one, this country needs to go forward. Number two, that devolution is something that is here to stay. Number three, that there are many things that ought to be done in order to improve devolution, which are of a governance kind. And he charges the National Assembly to distill those issues. He charges the Senate to distill those issues. He charges the Council of Governors to distill those issues. He charges the MCAs to distill those issues. And those issues are then brought to the table. And he asked the Attorney General and the CIC and the CRA and all other institutions to identify issues that require legislation. And if there are any issues that require constitutional amendment, we then deal with them as a necessary constitutional issues that require referendum. Then we go to the referendum as a united nation. Will the referendum happen? I think it may very well happen, because both sides of the political divide now see it as some kind of medieval political just, where they are going to use to show how powerful they are. The issues are being drowned. And as is typical in this country, we are going to spend 10 million. The referendum is going to be lost or won at the level of 51 to 49. The country is going to go to the elections in 2017 and 18 sharply divided. And that is my fear, and that is my unhappiness as a Kenyan.
Gentlemen, we're going to take another break, come back. We still have to talk about Westgate anniversary coming up. And also, that ship that was blown out of the water. Wow. Was there anything in it?
Nobody knows.
PLO calls it a medieval political juiced. My goodness. Somebody give me a pen and paper. Better yet, get me a thesaurus. The best tag team on television, calling it like they see it. JKL takes another break. We'll be back with plenty more